her things. Or rather, things are drifting out from under the rocks and shadows and showing themselves, and he is telling her about them. Just move your finger, Kate. Waggle it in the water. He'll come over. He can't resist. Cautiously, the little girl waggles her finger. Cautiously, a small snapping turtle slides over to investigate. See? They're very curious when they're young. When he gets older, though, he'll be suspicious and bad-tempered. Why? The old snapper they had trapped out on land once had looked sleepy rather than suspicious. He'd had a wrinkled, rubbery head, and she had wanted to pat it. Matt held out a branch as thick as his thumb, and the snapper chopped it in two. Their shells are small for the size of their bodies, smaller than most turtles, so a lot of their skin is exposed. It makes them nervous. The little girl nods, and the ends of her braids bob up and down in the water, making tiny ripples which tremble out across the surface of the pond. She is completely absorbed. Hundreds of hours we must have spent that way over the years. I came to know the tadpoles of the leopard frogs, the fat gray tadpoles of the bullfrogs, the tiny black wriggling ones of toads. I knew the turtles and the catfish, the water striders and the newts, the whirligigs spinning hysterically over the surface of the water. Hundreds of hours, while the seasons changed, and the pond life died and renewed itself many times, and I grew too big to ride on Matt's shoulders, and instead picked my way through the woods behind him. I was unaware of these changes, of course. They happened so gradually, and children have very little concept of time. Tomorrow is forever, and years pass in no time at all. Chapter 1. When the end came, it seemed to do so completely out of the blue, and it wasn't until long afterwards that I was able to see that there was a chain of events leading up to it. Some of those events had nothing to do with us, the Morrisons, but were solely the concern of the Pies, who lived on a farm about a mile away and were our nearest neighbors. The Pies were what you'd call a problem family, always had been, always would be. But that year, within the privacy of their big, old, gray-painted farmhouse, offstage as far as the rest of the community was concerned, their problems were developing into a full-scale nightmare. The other thing we didn't know was that the Pie nightmare was destined to become entangled with the Morrison dream. Nobody could have predicted that. There's no end to how far back you can go, of course, when you're trying to figure out where something started. The search can take you back to Adam and beyond. But for our family, there was an event that summer catastrophic enough to be the start of practically anything. It took place on a hot, still Saturday in July when I was 7 years old, and brought normal family life to an end. Even now, almost 20 years later, I find it hard to get any sort of perspective on it. The only positive thing you can say about it is that at least everything ended on a high note, because the previous day, our last day together as a family, my parents had learned that Luke, my other brother, other than Matt, had passed his senior matriculation and won a place at Teachers College. Luke's success was something of a surprise because, to put it mildly, he was not a scholar. I remember reading somewhere a theory to the effect that each member of a family has a role. The clever one, the pretty one, the selfish one. Once you've been established in the role for a while, you're stuck with it. No matter what you do, people will still see you as whatever it was. But in the early stages, according to the theory, you have some choice as to what your role will be. If that's the case, then early on in life, Luke must have decided that what he really wanted to be was the problem one. I don't know what influenced his choice, but it's possible that he'd heard the story of great-grandmother and her famous book rest once too often. That story must have been the bane of Luke's life. Or one of the banes. The other would have been having Matt as a brother. Matt was so obviously great-grandmother's true intellectual heir that there was no point in Luke even trying. Better, then, to find what he was naturally...